Well, it's a lot of people. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's quite an honour, I guess, from very humble beginnings, where we started 10, 12 years ago now, to where we are today. The bright lights and this many people in a hall gathered to, I guess, discuss Schoolbox. It's certainly very humbling for me. Only 5 years ago, we gathered around 20 people together in a classroom and spent the afternoon talking about Schoolbox and the direction that we were taking it with. And today we've got hundreds of people to do the same over 2 days. So I'm really excited about this opportunity, what it means, what we can do with this moving forward with this product. So firstly, I want to thank those 20 people that gathered on that faithful day, almost 5 years ago now. Many of those customers, in fact, I think all of those customers are still here with us today. They're still, I was talking to one before, they referred to themselves as the ancients. So I'm glad to have you along and still along for the journey. For those that don't know me, my name's James Leckie, obviously. My role is the product owner, so I look after the design, the roadmap and the implementation of that roadmap. It's an important role within the company. It's incredibly challenging. Every day I'm on my own individual journey to learn as much as possible about the education space. This involves, for me, talking to many of our customers, learning from our users, talking to our students and teachers, understanding who our competitors are and what they are doing in the space, and also acquiring personally new skills in technology, learning about what new technology is out there, and trying to bring all of these things together into a product is my role. So I take that very seriously, and that's sort of what I want to talk to you about today, about what I've been looking at in terms of the product and how I see it evolving over the last year. But also tomorrow I'm going to be talking further about how I see it evolving in the future as well. I guess what I love about the education industry personally is that we never stop learning. There's always an opportunity to learn something new. And for me personally, I love the idea of learning. I am a lifelong learner, and I love learning about new technologies, about experiences, about things that people have done or achieved. I loved hearing from Tim Cope before, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of our showcases about what they are doing with Schoolbox and how they're using it. Everyone has their own unique experience, and I think that's really important for us to all learn from those unique experiences. So today, this presentation that I've got for the next 50 minutes is to look at what we've developed over the last year. So what have we been working on? We've been hidden away in our office. I don't know if any of you have visited the new office, but it's an amazing new office and it's not hidden at all. You're all welcome to visit any time. But we're in there busily working away on the new features of Schoolbox, and I wanted to sort of discuss with you today what those new features will be. We obviously want to give schools the flexibility to choose where they want to upgrade, and we understand that change and deciding when that change happens is an important control that you need to maintain within your school, because change it can be difficult. But at the same time, we're always developing new features and functionality, and we're always talking with all this excitement and fanfare about the latest and greatest. But if we don't keep up to date with each other and keep on board with those updates together and on that journey together, we get in a situation where you're not benefiting from all the latest features. Let's talk now a bit about what this year's been focused on. So from our perspective, this year has really been about developing a full holistic picture of a student learner. We recognise that every student's journey is individual, and every student has a range of different attributes that makes up their learning journey within the school. We already had existing features within Schoolbox, such as e-portfolio, group pages. All of these things have really, I guess, built the fundamentals of a good platform with which we recognise the individual. But we wanted to take it further this year, and so I'm going to be talking today about some of the things that we've done to really emphasise what it is about being an individual student in a school and how our system can understand and represent and best help develop that individual within your school. I'm going to start with probably one of the more technical things, and it is an important topic, but it is technical. So for all those teachers out there, it's probably not something you worry about every day, but for our IT admins here, making sure that the right user accounts are set up in the right way at the right time is critically important. The UPS is the tool that we've developed, otherwise the shorthand name UPS. It is known as the User Provisioning System, but it is the shorthand name. UPS is a tool for provisioning your accounts onto your system. It is very challenging to get your head around, and it's not something you need to approach lightly. But once it is set up, and the power that it affords to manage and provision accounts and individually control how a user is set up in the system is incredibly powerful. With the user provisioning system, you can maintain the roles, the campuses, any other setting that's personalised to that particular user based on the information that's already stored in your SIS. So we look at all the data that's in your student management system and then utilise that information to populate into the accounts in Schoolbox and then define a user profile that's specific for that user. Traditionally, this has been done with a hand-coded sync script. And for those ancients out there, you would remember the sync scripts and how every time you wanted to change, you'd have to call us up on the phone and get us to do it, and it would take a few weeks to get it done. The UPS now unlocks the ability for you to do that on the spot. So if you need to change the way that your users are assigned to groups or to campuses, you can do that right then and there without any interaction with us. We do note that there has been some issues with the UPS coming, especially some of the schools with some of the lesser known SIS products, they have had problems. Most of those problems have now been worked out. So I do encourage you, if you did have challenges to begin with, that to revisit it and to try it again. Many of the fields that may not have been there when you first tried it at the beginning of the year have now been populated and are available for use in that SIS. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and what's actually up there on the screen on the side there on the left, is actually the ability now, since version 16, to provision users into groups. Now, this was probably one of the most requested features last year, I think, at the Meetup from IT managers. The idea that you could actually automatically put a person in a group based on their information in the SIS. In the particular example that I have up on the screen, you can see that the users have been assigned, or this is actually a parent rule, it's actually assigning the parents to year level groups. Now what this enables is you can now do dedicated communication to parents by year level, and the system will automatically roll over and maintain the groups that parents are in. So you don't have to worry about when the new students come into the school, leave the school, the system will automatically assign the parents into the correct groups and then start those communication channels that are more customised and more unique for that parent's experience at the school. So a very powerful feature, but that's not the only way you can use the group provisioning system. You could use it for a whole variety of different group setups and organisation. But just remember that groups are a key communication channel, and being able to manage them via your SIS data, you can automatically set up who goes into what groups via their existing data that you have on them. I just wanted to mention one of the things that we often get asked about is unprovisioning or removal of accounts. And people are always disappointed that we fundamentally say no at the support desk on that one. I just want to explain a bit about why that's the case so that people understand the policy we have there. The most important, I guess, reason behind why we don't unprovision accounts or automatically delete accounts from Schoolbox is that the definition of a user leaving the school is very hard to define. For some schools, it's as simple as, well, they're no longer enrolled. But for other schools, there's left, there's leaving, there's on excursion, there's on holiday, there is on exchange. There's a whole lot of variations in the definition of left. And that then causes a whole lot of issues to happen automatically, such as deleting users, which is not something you want to happen accidentally. So we've always been very careful not to go down the road of unprovisioning, and we always request that you take the process of unprovisioning or removing users from your system as a manual process, so you can ensure that you're not removing anyone that shouldn't be removed from the system. Okay, let's move on to my next topic, which is the course builder. So this was probably the biggest feature that we released mid-year. It was a very important change. It marked, I guess, our journey towards a bit more focus on the user experience. and many of you gave us feedback and via the forums that the course system as we had developed originally was prone to error. And that error consisted because the system was very flexible. It allowed people to make mistakes. And that wasn't necessarily good or bad, but it did create a situation where the system wasn't as clean as it should have been. So some of the issues that people were experiencing, the courses were located in incorrect locations, they weren't structured correctly, they weren't organised properly. So I guess we went back to the drawing board and thought, well, how can we make this more structured? And we built the course builder as a wizard process to step you through the process of building courses. Can I get a hands up? Who's using the course system in Schoolbox at the moment? Excellent. So it's about 60 to 70% of you are already using courses within the system, and I assume you've already experienced the benefits that the course builder has brought to the system. For those that haven't, the course builder is a great place to come in and start using the system, because now it does provide an easy to use entrance point to actually beginning to use courses. So we obviously recognise the benefits of having well-organised, well-developed courses within the system. You can share them across the cohort, you can reuse them year on year, you can save all your content in them. There's many benefits to having good courses set up in the system. So we wanted to sort of reinforce that with the course builder. All right, so just quickly to go over some of the rules that we implemented within the course builder, because these rules are fairly important. They define what it is that is a course within Schoolbox when you use the course builder. And I should mention that you can still go and do it the old way. You can still go and create the wacky courses that you could always create with the many levels and the many structures and the many different ways that people did create courses. It's all still possible. But within the course builder, we define some strict rules about how you build a course. So firstly, courses will now be always located in a location defined by the admin. So they'll always be located in a specific location. For most schools, that's your faculties folder. Some schools have got a courses folder, but it does contain them all in a special location, so you always know where they are. When creating the course and the course unit pages, the course builder will always use the same templates. So it'll always ensure that you actually have the exact same look and feel for all courses, ensuring that you get that consistent approach across the entire organisation and ensure that all the components that you need as part of a course are placed into the page that it creates, which is really important for getting teachers up and running quickly. And finally, it sets out in the builder an order in which you need to answer these questions. So the first question is which faculty? Up here I've got an example, Year 9 English is my course. It would be in the faculty English, and below that we then have our unit pages. So it asks, after creating the course, it asks you what units you would like to build within your course. So it sets out a nice structured order. So it's a very useful feature to step your teachers without needing a whole lot of training and understanding about things like the resource browser or components on a home page, what components you need to have and have not, what templates you need to select. All of those questions have been taken away by the course builder. So you can just get quickly and easily into your staff using courses, and anyone should be able to answer the questions that the course builder asks. With courses, we do now consider them best practice in Schoolbox. We now consider the development of courses to be our recommended best practice. So with that, I guess, change, we've now elevated the courses to the top level navigation. So you'll now find that there's a courses button on every page in Schoolbox, so you can always quickly jump to the courses area and see what courses have been created and set up within Schoolbox at any time. When you start out with the course builder and you're using it, I just wanted to go through a few things that it's important to remember. So using the course builder will obviously ensure consistency. However, that does come with a lack of diversity and flexibility when building courses. But the consistency is generally a good thing. It's not a bad thing to have that consistency. Always do, of course, remember that you can create courses using the resource browser and all the traditional ways as well. So if you do need more complex structures, you can always go back to the old way. Please do make sure that you review the templates that the course builder will use. So when creating a course page and a course unit page, the system has automatically set up default templates, but you've got complete control as admins over those course pages and those unit pages. If you want to put things like curriculum overviews, learning outcomes, those types of bits of information, structured information around your courses, you can obviously add that in at the template so that it prompts the teachers to fill in that information down the track once those courses have been built. They'll have all the areas there ready to go for them to populate with the other information that you might require to be included with that course. And of course, finally, the course builder is new, but it doesn't replace the existing functionality. All of the existing courses, everything that you did before will still be there, will still work. You can still continue to use it. You may need to clean it up a little bit to bring it in line with the organisation that the course builder sort of brings, but all of your existing courses will still be there, so there's never any loss of information in that process. Moving next to the, I guess the next stage of courses was the course import. And this was a great example where we got excellent feedback from our online forum. Those that didn't or haven't participated in the online forum yet, I do highly encourage you to. But we had a 3 or 4 page thread going on our online forum about how to build the best course import feature there ever was. And from those discussions, we were able to distill down the course import function. So firstly, one of the main things that people pointed out was that they wanted the ability to not only import a course, but import a course simultaneously to many classes. So to be able to say, I want to import this course to the entire cohort. With that understanding, with that insight, we were then able to develop a system that allows you to deploy all of the work for all of your classes in one click. So all you need to do is list the classes that this course should be targeted to, and it will quickly and easily assign all of that work, all of those assessment tasks to all of those classes. This opened up another interesting problem while we were testing this, that ownership of the material is quite important. Now, if you had your faculty head or your lead content course builder doing this importation process, all the material that ended up on the class pages would be owned by that person. So we added an extra step in now that now assigns the work to the teacher of the class as you import it. So the teacher automatically is given ownership of that material on the import process. There is some controls there on that screen, so you can alter that if you want at the time. You might have multiple teachers or something like that. You can choose which teacher becomes the owner. But it does allow you to direct the curriculum, the due work, the assessments, the quizzes to be owned by the appropriate person at the right time. The most important, I guess, feature of this upgrade was that we wanted to simplify the management of dates. Now, when we were importing courses, traditionally we only allowed you to set the dates on the units, and that became fairly simplistic. Many schools were telling me that they had common assessment dates already planned out. All of those calendars were ready to go. They knew when the work was supposed to be handed in. Why couldn't they put in all those dates when they imported it? So the new importer allows you to set all the dates for all the tasks across all your classes in one go. So you can set those common assessment dates for all of your assessments with one single import out to all the classes, so they all share the same common assessment dates across the entire cohort. So that was an important update. Obviously, as an individual teacher, you can always go back into the import screen and modify all those dates. So once you become the owner of that material, you can change those dates and alter them for your particular class. But it gives a great starting point for the teacher to arrive day one, all of the common assessment tasks with all of their dates already set up on their class page, ready to go for the students to start completing and undertaking. So it's greater streamlining of the whole process to get that information set up, ready to go. And of course, saving teachers time. I guess that's what technology really should be about. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we start building all this technology, but at the end of the day, we wanted to build something that actually saved you time. So you didn't have to communicate all those dates individually, you didn't have to do all of that work. It was done with one simple click. Okay, so back now out of the teaching and learning, back into the admin requested features. So last year we had a heated discussion about inheritance. I think I sat up here on a panel and it got asked me about 3 times about inheritance. And it's certainly another one of those really popular features that we've delivered on in the last 6 months. So with inheritance, it was a matter of when you created a folder, each folder had its own unique permissions. But now with the new system, each folder can inherit from the folder above. All types of permissions can now easily flow through the entire tree. So this saves you a whole lot of time having to manage individual permissions on folders. It sounds like a really simple thing. It was actually quite complex. It took a lot of rewriting, a lot of optimization to actually get it to be performant. But it's been done now, and I think the benefits speak for themselves. When creating a folder, there's no longer 10 questions you have to answer about which role should have to access this folder. You can now just leave the inherit button ticked, and the rest of the work is done for you. We decided on that behaviour, on seeing the inheritance, that it was so much simpler that we would just leave it as default. So now that whenever a teacher creates a folder, they don't have to worry about permissions at all. They'll just automatically inherit. Importantly, I guess the permission inheritance works not only for the role permissions, but also for group memberships and class enrolment. This fixed quite a few long-standing issues where teachers would create a subfolder in their class and the students might not be able to access it. This happened because of various permissions set, but now with the class permissions rolling down so that the class code has its own permissions and the permissions flow with that class code to all subfolders underneath that class, you can be assured that students will always have access to the material that's located underneath the class page. But of course, be aware of that, because at the same time, that's a great convenience. If you're a teacher and you're trying to create a private folder, you now need to explicitly state this is a private folder. I'm not going to inherit my permissions from the folder above. I'm going to explicitly not make this private. So just be aware of that. It is a great benefit, but it can come with some caveats. Of course, for groups, the common use case that we saw there was that we would have committees or user groups within the school that were creating subfolders to organise all their files and resources, and the permissions didn't flow through from the group. So the person who had write access to the group above wasn't able to write to the folder below. It didn't make much sense. Now with the inheritance, you can access all those folders as if the same membership you had in the folder above. So great feature, and once again, popular request, and thanks for the feedback. Always happy to take it on board. Now back to the pedagogy. So with Rubrics, they have been one of the most heavily discussed and debated topics in our organisation for the last 12 months. We believe Rubrics form a fairly fundamental part of what we are doing with assessment and pedagogy, and how a platform such as Schoolbox can really add value and benefits. Rubrics are really the core tool which we see that being delivered. We've invested very heavily in the development of Rubrics, and we've gone through several revisions of Rubrics over the years. They started out quite simplistic, just as a very basic table, and over the years they've developed to have multiple levels, and we've got subcategories and points and different ways to add the marks together. And so I just want to talk quickly about some of those benefits. So with levels, we have added the levels in so that you can then align your descriptors to a standard level system. Now this is really important when we're doing analysis of this data later on. If everything's aligned to a standard or to some form of standard system, we're then able to pull that data out and analyse it across cohort, across year level, and across even wider boundaries. But you can't do that unless you have standard levels by which your rubrics are developed. So the levels are a really important feature to enable that analysis of marked data later down the track when we start to ask the deep questions about what is students doing within the school. And I'll be talking a lot more about that tomorrow. We've added the ability to do blank descriptors, because when we added levels and we added standardisation, we realised that there's not always a descriptor for every level. So we allowed you to leave descriptors blank. So that's an important improvement. Points are now optional. So one of the things that we obviously believe very strongly is that rubrics are part of assessment and part of feedback. But rubrics can be used in a variety of different ways. We're not just talking about analytical rubrics, but also holistic rubrics. Rubrics that measure, Tim was talking about resilience or patience. Rubrics that measure behaviours and other factors that contribute to a student's learning. They don't have to just be about knowledge. They can be about a broad range of different topics. So points are optional. Sometimes points aren't relevant to some of those behaviours. In addition to rubrics, we made them no longer a core marking system. What I mean by that is that traditionally rubrics were a mark type, so we actually used them as the mark. But now rubrics inform the mark. And this is, I guess, the recognition that, once again, rubrics aren't always marking. They are actually sometimes just feedback. So now we've detached the rubric from the mark, allowing the teacher to still give a teacher discretion grade or a letter or a mark, and still provide the rich feedback of a rubric. So you can have the two systems working independently, allowing you much more flexibility in how you deliver your continuous reporting solution. With the rubrics, we do hope everyone gets on board. If you want more information specifically on rubrics, look out. I'm doing a webinar, I think in 2 weeks' time, on rubrics. I actually have done a presentation just recently at a conference, but I'll be repeating it online. So if you want to get involved, come to help, and you'll find the link to the webinar. Sign up, and I'll be running through how rubrics work, how to use them as an effective feedback tool, how to get the most out of them, and some of the long-term visions we have for how we're going to use the data gathered with rubrics, and what we see the benefits of investing in those rubrics. I'm not going to lie that rubrics are difficult. They're hard to build. They take a lot of investment up front, but the benefits are there, and capturing that data in a digital system such as Schoolbox, there's definitely a lot of value in doing something along those lines. Okay, so pastoral care, and continuing on with the theme of the individual that we started this event with. Pastoral care is very much one of those things that I guess represents the individual more than anything. It's a way that we can capture what it is about that student that makes that student unique, and share that information with other teachers that might be coming in contact with that student. It's a very important way of cataloguing that information, sharing it, making it available to other teachers. I should mention that this feature is only available in the highest level plan of Schoolbox. For those that aren't on the highest level plan, it's not available, but for those that are, you can start using this feature today. So just quickly about our approach to this system. We wanted to make it fairly simple. We didn't want it to be complex or advanced. As always, with Schoolbox, we like simple best. So we really went about two things: creating a system to record events and managing the visibility of those events. And everything else is really just bells and whistles on top of that. Each event has a type, importance, tags, visibility, and also optionally attached docs. You can use the system for learning plans, medical treatment plans, discipline incidents, awards, recommendations, testimonials. It doesn't matter what you use it for. I guess the ultimate purpose really is to keep teachers informed about who that student is as an individual. One of the things that we always hear about is that a lot of this information gets lost in emails. A lot of time it's shared between two teachers. They email each other, or they share a note, or it's emailed to a group of teachers. And of course, we all know that once it's gone into an inbox, it's never to be seen again, and it's not archived and not stored. But this system really does allow you to store and keep all of that information together with the student, so that as they move through, other teachers can access that information. So as new teachers take over the responsibility of that student, they can see all that information. We'll move now on to my general grab bag of features that we've developed over the last 6 months. So obviously those are the big headline features, but it's all the small little tweaks and changes that we do that sometimes go unrecognised that I think are important to talk about as well, and just to highlight some of these. So quickly, image galleries on blogs. So this was a highly requested feature. In the context of, say, a junior school where they've got a class page and they're posting what's happening in the classroom, you can now quickly and easily drag and drop a few images and they'll be automatically create an image gallery at the end of your blog post. Really simple, really easy, but a great feature to have nonetheless. One of the things that we got heaps and heaps of feedback about was the notifications. Everyone was claiming that the notifications was taking up all their screen. It only appeared on the largest of screens, but they were there nonetheless. Now the notifications can be stashed. So you can put them away, hide them away so they don't clutter up the screen and distract you while you're trying to work. You just click on the red notifications bar. It only works basically on the bigger screens, by the way. They're automatically stashed on all small screens, anything from a laptop down. But on the biggest screens, on big desktops, they did show all the time. Now you just click on the word notifications and they'll disappear. One of the other things that went unnoticed was the ability to submit work on behalf of students. So once again, this really comes down to the junior school and how the junior school interacts with the system. Often submitting work on behalf of students is something you want to do to capture some evidence of what the student did against that assessment. So being able to submit that work as a teacher on their behalf allows you to store that evidence in Schoolbox and have it there for later reference. Of course, we added box and whisker graphs for students, and many of you have seen that feature where you can now have a graph that shows where in the context of the class that student placed. You can turn that on and off, and we have received lots of feedback that you'd like to be able to turn that on and off per student. And so we'll be introducing that soon as well. So you can control the box and whiskers for students individually. Another little known or unseen feature was the engagement reports. And I have Walter here who prompted me to build the engagement reports. But basically they give you insights into the level of usage across the system. So you can actually see how many people from that user group are logging in once a month, what features they're using the most, whether the collaboration tools are being used effectively. There's some great insights to be had just by having a quick look at that data and seeing how the system's being used by your different user groups and what features are being used and perhaps not being used as much, and maybe where you can do some additional PD to support the development of those features. And finally, the disk recovery system. So many of you with limited disk have said that Schoolbox keeps eating all my disk. I say storage is cheap, but at some point we decided we would have to give it back. So there's now a new integrated garbage collection process that will go looking for files that haven't been used or are no longer referenced, and will clean those up for you. So if they're no longer being used, the system will go and automatically dispose of those files. Okay, so now time for the big announcements. So this is the stuff you haven't seen. This is everything I've done so far. You've already seen, most likely. Looked like a lot of you had already upgraded to version 16, so most of you have already seen and are using those features, so that's great. But all the stuff I'm going to talk about now is the stuff we've been working on over the last few months. It's going to be coming out hopefully late October, but as I always say, it will be out when it's ready and not before. But the scheduled date is late October at this stage. So let's start with the big one, the big feature for this release, which is sports fixtures. So sports fixtures. I guess it's finally here. It has been, I think it's been on the list on the roadmap for 4 years now. So it's been a long time coming. We're pretty excited that it's finally rolling out. When we did develop this during the process, we did realise that it's not just sports fixtures. Many schools have other events on that this could potentially be used for. So we probably will drop the name sports from the system ultimately and just call it fixtures, so that you can use it for band, you could use it for chess, debating, a whole range of different things. Anything that has a match basically, or a come together and a team, you can use this system for. So let's have just a quick look through some of the screens. Firstly, the primary, I guess, goal when we set about what is it this system's going to do was to notify students and parents of when and where games are on. So obviously notifications and our notification systems are a big part of this system. We have that great notification infrastructure. We're able to notify people on a range of different devices, mobile phones, email, and it's all configurable for how that user wants to communicate, how they want to be communicated with, and so we're utilising that infrastructure to notify people at the right time about what they need to be, what team they're in, what game they're playing, and where they need to play. But obviously that's the easy part. The hard part is actually building up a database of all the teams, all the games, all the events that are on across the entire school, and that's the challenge. So the first thing that we set about developing was a really easy to use system for managing the teams. Back about 10 years ago, I actually built a sports fixtures system for another school. And the challenge there was not so much getting the students to use or the parents to use the system, but it was getting the sports admins to maintain the system. So I recognised that challenge was probably going to be, once again, the biggest challenge with this system. So making a simple to use system that the sports admins could easily just drag and drop a student from one team into another, move them around with simple, easy to use controls would be the way forward to making the simplest possible system for a sports admin to keep up to date. Because if this data isn't up to date, then students are going to the wrong place. So it's really important that we get this right and we get the data in the right place at the right time. So once the teams are all set up and scheduled, we then load a fixture, and that'll be imported in as a spreadsheet or put in manually if they really want to. But that will go into the system and organise all the teams who are playing, where they're playing, when they're playing, etc. Once all that data comes together and you receive that pop-up notification on your phone, you'll be directed to this page here. So 24 hours before the match, you're going to get a notification that says, tomorrow you're playing at this ground, this location, with these teammates, and potentially with this bus itinerary for those that use buses to get students to their grounds. There's also the capability to add bus itineraries and other itineraries into the event as well. This page also gathers results. So if there's a washout, a change of teams, anything else that happens within that 24 hours, it will update and re-notify the students and the parents of those students that those changes have been made. So it'll automatically take care of any weather changes or location changes that you may have and notify all the people that are necessary. So after the game's over, the coach or the team captains, could be students, can post the results directly to the page, and that will then once again notify all the members of that team and their parents of the outcome of the game. And you can attach photos and other rich text and replace that game page with a photo of your win or anything else that you'd like to append to that game page. But of course, we recognise that many schools already have team pages built into their system. So we wanted to extend the capability of your existing team pages. So we've added a new homepage component called Fixtures, which you can put on your team pages and attach the full fixture showing the wins and losses and the upcoming games that that team is playing. So any page in Schoolbox can be turned into a team page displaying the upcoming fixture and any other information you want attached to that team page as well. I imagine most of the Premier teams will probably have that type of page, but then of course for just your small general teams, they may not have their own homepage. They may just rely on these match pages and the notifications to tell them where to go. Of course, I should note that because Schoolbox is fully responsive, that massive change that we made last year that everyone hated but we had to do, it now means that all of this information is available on your mobile phone. So whether you're a parent on the way to the ground or whether you're on the field after the game and you need to report the results, you'll be able to do that from your smartphone and not need to go back to a computer. Okay, so next big thing that's happening in the 16.5 release is that we're looking at rebuilding practically most of the learning management system. And this is no small undertaking. Primarily, we're looking to fix some of the odd quirks that exist within the system, such as when you submit multiple files, it doesn't really submit, it submits separate submissions for each file that you submit. We'd like to be able to group multiple files into a single submission. You can't mark a particular student's submission within that list. So if a student submits 5 times, you can't identify which one you want to mark. So we want to try and work through some of those little quirks that happen within the submission system. Of course, we're also going to be cleaning up a lot of the logic behind courses, course units, and class pages. Some of you may have noticed that the course builder, the analytics, the learning analytics, and some of those other pages run a bit slow. So hopefully with these changes we can improve the performance of those pages. And it will also help us go forward with much better analytics and the ability to report in more detail about what's going on in the submission system. I guess the big news of this rebuild though is that we never like to just do a rebuild, we always want to add some value in at the same time. And the big new feature for this rebuild will be the addition of a new element within the learning management system called projects. Many schools are starting to embark on project-based learning, individualisation, differentiation, a whole range of different strategies for curriculum delivery. And all of those needed a new container for which we could contain that information. They needed a way to present that in a block and a way to control that block. So the project gives us that ability to contain different attributes. And I'll just talk a bit about how that project's going to work to facilitate all those different ideas in one system. So firstly, the project can be created alongside existing assessments. So your due work, your quizzes and your tasks, they'll all still be there, they'll all still remain. But projects is a new addition that you'll be able to create in that same list within the course builder or the course outline. It'll give you an extra level, so an extra level of depth, because within a project you can create more quizzes, tasks and due work. So you'll have another one layer down that didn't exist before. So you can imagine that it'll be an extra level within your course. So you'll have course, unit and project. This extra level of depth gives us a wide variety of options for how we then present this information. So firstly, some of the use cases that we've been thinking about when we developed this, but I imagine and I expect that most teachers will come up with new and creative ways to use this technology. But some of the use cases that we thought of were each assessment in a project will be able to be assigned to a specific set of students, allowing you to differentiate the assessments. So you could create a due work item in the 2 due work items inside the project and assign half the students to do one and half the students to do another, thus creating that differentiation, allowing you to differentiate which assessment the students see. The container project will allow the results from both those separate assessments to roll up into a single item in your Markbook, allowing you to see the results together in one place. We'll be able to summate the results from the project into a single result. The other thing that we'll be able to do is allow certain parts of a project to be optional. So you'll be able to allow students to personalise their own learning. They'll be able to have 3 or 4 different options for assessment and select which one they want to do. And all you'll see at the end of the day is the final project mark. So the system will automatically summate which assessment they chose to do. And of course, every student's going to choose a different assessment, and then we'll summate all of those results together. So if a student's done at least one, they will have achieved the result for the project. So we allow personalisation through the ability for students to choose optionally which part of the project they want to do. Finally, projects may be larger than just 1 or 2 assessments. They could define a whole list of activities. So that idea of project-based learning, where students need to do a whole range of activities together in one project, can be all grouped together. So you might have a series of tasks, some quizzes, 3 or 4 things that they need to hand in along the development of that project. They might have to initially submit a project recommendation, what they're going to do, and then they might need to submit a draft, and then they might need to submit the final copy. So the project will allow you to contain all of that information together as well. So you'll be able to develop rich projects for students to complete. With all these, I guess, sophisticated workflows that we're sort of unlocking now with the addition of the project, we recognise that the Markbook is probably going to need a lot of work. having all these extra optionals, differentiations, all of those things happening, the Markbook's going to need to be able to present all of this information to you. So we're looking to merge the existing progress report and Markbook into a single page. We're going to allow you to hide and collapse units, projects, so you'll be able to expand and collapse those columns, drilling down into more specific detail as required, but at a very high level you'll be able to see unit overviews, drill down, be able to see the projects and due work within that unit, drill down further into projects and see the outcomes of that specific project. So the Markbook will become quite a lot more sophisticated to enable all of this functionality. I guess the Markbook will become the place where you will monitor and manage student progression. So we want it to be a tool that provides you the insights into student progression, where they're at, what their learning is like. And with that, we're going to be adding filters so that you can filter that data and sort that data to see the types of information that you'd be looking for when looking at progression. All right, so finally, as more work is being sort of managed and loaded into Schoolbox, the traditional list submission view, you know, the one, the submissions tab at the top that all teachers have, as more and more work has been added in and courses are now adding more work in, it's becoming quite an unwieldy view, and it's not really serving and not really fit for purpose anymore. So the list submission view is going to be rebuilt to be specifically focused on showing you what assessments are pending right now. We define that pending as work that needs to be marked. So if students are handing into that submission, we're going to be showing you that. If that submission is due this week, we're going to be showing you that. So we're going to be identifying which submission items you actually need to take action on and show them, rather than just listing all of the submission items that you currently have. Back in the day when you only had 10 or 15 items, a list was fine, but now we're looking at people with hundreds of items. We need to get more active about that list, so that's becoming more about telling you what you need to do as a teacher next, rather than telling you everything that you've ever done as a teacher. So finally, just to wrap up, we do have many more plans for the LMS, and this rebuild is really the fundamentals that we need to get in place before we take our plans to the next stage. But that about brings me to the end of my session. But thank you very much for today, and thanks for coming. I'll look forward to speaking to you at all at lunchtime, and feel free to come up and ask me any questions.
Let's have a round of applause for James Leckie.